Good morning, everybody. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Blessed to be with you. And joining us now from east of the Great River, our great friend Jim Byrne, Democratic activist, candidate, elected official, consultant, man of the world, who joins us now to give us a preview of, well, what to expect now that the DLL, the devious little libs, have taken over Congress, at least the House. Jim, good to have you with us, sir.
Good morning, Kevin. It's always good to be with you.
That sounds so sincere.
And I mean that.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's for people that aren't familiar with you, we've had you on for years. It's been a while. Look, I wasn't really looking forward to having you back on because you're gonna give us the other perspective. We've had a great 2-year run here with the president. Those of us on the Republican side. But for people that aren't familiar with you as a grassroots candidate, as a statewide elected official, as someone who has run the state Democratic Party, please let folks know here at KIDO Talk Radio. I guess I'm establishing the credibility of the witness, Jim. You could appreciate that.
As a trial attorney, I would say that you've done remarkably well there. I'm sure you could. No, but I've been blessed to have a career in public service. It started in the early to mid-'90s. I was mayor of a small borough in Allegheny County, which is where Pittsburgh is, a little borough right outside of the city of Pittsburgh called Millvale. I was mayor there for 12 years, where I first met Kevin, who was doing some work out here. So I served there for 12. I was on the Allegheny County Council from there, president for a couple of years. I got involved in the Democratic Party, which was my affiliation and my orientation. Became the chairman of the Allegheny County Democratic Party, and from there I moved on to be the chairman of the Pennsylvania Democratic Party from 2010 through 2015, ushering in the reelection of President Obama, and putting a lot of good winning tickets together from the Democratic side. But, Kevin, there was the partisanship of being a party chairman, but there was also the business of being an elected official, and as a mayor and as a president of a council with both Republicans and Democrats, I always came from a position of the art of politics is over once the voters have decided and you get to the business of government. So although I am Democrat, moderate Democrat, I always put the needs of the people ahead of the party agenda when it comes time to do the governing.
Well, Jim, I have so many questions for you here on KIDO Talk Radio, but before we get rolling, I still remember the night, one of the many nights that you and I were hanging out, and you were the one that revealed to me about President Obama's just incredible organization. That not only when he took over the DNC, he took over those satellite offices, but he had so much organization and resources to do it. But he actually had shadow offices in pretty much every DNC district in the country, which I don't think anybody has done before or after.
No, it was an amazing network that he established. In both sides of the aisle, you have the parties, the Republican Party, from the local level up to the national level. Democrats have the same thing, the party infrastructure. It has bylaws, it has rules. You have ultimately culminating in the conventions every 4 years to nominate the candidate for president. But there are also other organizations that want to get involved as well, and folks who are activists who want to go canvassing for their candidate, irrespective of their affiliation. The Obama team built up infrastructure of folks who weren't necessarily with the organized party, but wanted to get involved, either because they didn't see a spot there or they wanted to take a different approach. But they created an operation, Obama for America, that worked alongside of, in some instances, interfaced with the pre-existing party structures. And the social media and the canvassing and the networking and the information that they had, it was really an incredible operation. And the data that they would get from going door to door, it created the algorithm and the modeling that a lot of candidates and the parties on both sides are still trying to emulate and catch up with. It really put him way ahead of the curve. I mean, we can agree to disagree on who had the better message, but we think that the President Obama did, obviously. But irrespective of that issue, that aside, the infrastructure put him at the three-quarter turn before his opponents were even out of the gates.
Right,
and that's in the primaries. and in the generals. I mean, Hillary Clinton thought she was going to be just, it was going to be a coronation. She made that mistake in 8, and she made it again in 16, but she made it in 8. And nobody gave that senator from Illinois a chance, but nobody saw the infrastructure sneaking up. The Clintons came at it the old school fashion, let's go through the party. We'll call this guy, we'll call that guy, we'll go see these folks in this town, we'll go see these folks in that state, and the apparatus will just, the inertia will carry us in. Meanwhile, you had this guy coming out of Illinois with this new model, this new approach, this grassroots, door-to-door. Everybody has a seat at this table. I'm not going to take the special interest. I'm not going to do it this way. We're going to go a new way. And next thing you know, I'm at the convention in Denver. You and I were talking every day, as I recall, when I was out there.
Right.
There we are in Denver, and next thing you know, the whole Hillary operation, you could just see the votes just were not there. And I was a committed delegate for Hillary Clinton at the time. And Governor Rendell was the quote unquote head of the Pennsylvania Democratic Party at that point. And I just remember him running up and down that aisle on the floor and just watching the look on his face as he realized it wasn't going to happen. And there was some concern, Kevin, at the time that there would be a rift in the party, but you could see the Hillary folks coming over and getting behind then Senator Obama. But back to your point, infrastructure, unprecedented. Never saw anything like it.
What do you think will be his legacy?
Well, I think the legacy he brings or will bring, and I truly believe that to have the conversation of healthcare, affordable healthcare for all Americans, irrespective of pre-existing conditions, is an amazing step. Now, look, I understand that his successor has walked some of that back, and there's one attempt after another, repeal Obamacare. The bottom line is he was the first to jump into that water and have that conversation in an aggressive fashion, to pass health care and create opportunities for all Americans to have an opportunity to have affordable health care. And sure, was it the perfect system? No. Is it the perfect system? No. And he said that repeatedly. The first step to starting a conversation to create the opportunity to ensure that all Americans can see a doctor was something that hadn't been done before. Hillary tried it in the early 90s, didn't work. He actually got it done. And I don't get discouraged by what I hear or what I read about they're going to kill Obamacare. It's not going to happen. But what is going to happen from this debate that we're currently having is that we'll take what works and keep it, and we'll take what doesn't work and hopefully make it better. That's his biggest legacy, I believe.
Oh, but let's continue on with that. We had Republicans in the House, Republicans in the Senate, Republican in the White House. It was a great run for us the last 2 years, Jim. And as we talked about here on KIDO Talk Radio, the repeals didn't happen, and you had Republicans saying, well, we said we were going to do this, and they didn't have a plan. And my favorite was, we have a plan, but it's going to cost you more money. And you're going, this is not what we voted for. That's why I think the Democrats did so well in the House anyway, and got the majority back in the House. The Republicans had all three chambers. Many of them ran and won on repeal Obamacare. I don't understand. Well, in conservative areas where that message resonated, so they acquired power. They had all three chambers, and yet these promises to build the wall, these promises to repeal Obamacare, they failed. And I think some of the exit polling and the exit data that we've seen suggested exactly what you just said: is we have another plan, but it's going to cost more. Or conversely, folks on both sides of the aisle would say, okay, this isn't the perfect plan for me. I'm paying more than I thought I would under Obamacare. I'm listening, Republican candidate. What do you got over there that's better than what I have right now? And they couldn't give that answer. They weren't able to do it. That, coupled with the fact that they weren't able to repeal it, people started seeing some empty rhetoric. And that's one reason. Another is, statistically, whichever party is normally in the White House usually loses seats in a midterm. I think other than Reagan in 86, maybe, the incumbent party that has the White House usually loses. So you've got that phenomena as well. But their inability to deliver on campaign promises when they had all three chambers definitely hurt them this past fall. Well, plus it was a perfect storm with so many retirements, and you're right. The first midterm of an administration, it's usually devastating. We saw that in 2010 with President Obama. We saw it in 1994 with President Clinton. And then you throw in all the retirements. As a Democrat, what did you make of so many Republicans, particularly in the House, bailing on the president?
A couple of things. A lot of the folks that you see retiring from the Republican Party, they don't like the caustic environment down there anymore. And both sides say that. And we've seen some retirements on our side. It's getting more and more difficult for lawmakers, especially on the Republican side, to defend some of these tweets, to defend some of this behavior, the turnover in the West Wing. Some of the greatest minds, militarily speaking, the Mattises and others that have been around this man, just to submit resignations and then be hastily shown the door. It's been more and more difficult for traditional lawmakers to hold the party line when the president behaves in the ways that he behaves. Some folks like that he tells it like he sees it, or he's not afraid to, tweet his mind, so to speak. But it has become more and more difficult for them to figure out what the next move is when you have a man behaving so incoherently.
Right. It is, though, fascinating, and you're from a plain-speaking part of the country where we've had people say we want our politicians this way.
That's true. And 2016 was a referendum on the establishment, both sides. I liked the message that the electorate gave in 2016. You had all those names on both sides when it first started. Traditional names. Clinton on our side. You had Bernie Sanders, who was coming from the same approach that Trump was, except from, with different agenda items. But it was the constant in the Sanders equation and the constant in the Trump equation was, we need some change. We need some outsiders in there. And we can maybe talk later in the program about how that has played out in our party out here and across the country with the DSA. It's the same thing. But people liked that message that Trump gave. We're going to drain the swamp, or I'm not part of that establishment down there. And we need a new face to come in and just tell it like it is. The message is okay, but this messenger has lost his way, I would submit, with some of the behavior, and quite frankly, I just don't think some of the name calling and calling people rats and demeaning people is fitting for the highest office in the civilized world. I think he's walked it back a few steps, and we've lost some respectability from that. Having someone who's not from the Beltway is a good thing, but having this person behave the way he has behaved, it's not helping any of us, especially as the strongest nation in the world.
More coming up with our great friend Jim Byrne next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Coming up, we'll give you traffic and weather together on 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Kevin Miller with our great friend Jim Byrne joining us east of the Great River, certainly a Democrat, and sometimes we have to import the Democrats to speak to me, Jim. I guess it's just my personality.
Well, I never hesitated coming on your show when you were out here in Pittsburgh with us. Good, bad, or indifferent. But no, I mean, if you need, that must speak volumes to the fear that the Democrats have of you. West of the Mississippi River, the closest Democrat you can get is in Pittsburgh. So,
or it really shows the lack of my networking skills, I suppose.
There's just sort of that many Democrats out there. You're in southern Idaho or
southwest Idaho? Yep.
Southwest. Isn't that where Napoleon Dynamite was from? I think.
Yep, a little over Preston, Idaho, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, there's probably not that many registered Democrats out that way.
No, we don't have a lot of your kind out here.
I was not to digress too far, but I took my family across country this past summer. We came across 70, and I said to my wife, Lori, look, we can deviate here and we can go up and say hello to Kevin. She remembers you, and she goes, no, that's about 6 hours out of the way. So,
right.
If you would have had a knock on your door, you would have been hopefully pleasantly surprised.
You would have had a place to stay, certainly, my friend.
Thank you.
Traffic and weather together, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Good morning, Dave. All right, let's get back to business. Our great friend Jim Byrne joining us. So how, you take a look at the president now. He's got Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House. He's got Adam Schiff, who says he's going to investigate everything. As a political operative, as an elected official, as a consultant, as a state party chairman, if the president called you, how do you think he plays this?
I hope he doesn't play it like he did 2 weeks ago when he invited Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer to the Oval Office. He needs to play it more presidential. He needs to talk about policy. He can't be talking over folks like he's done. He needs to listen to what they have to say. If he wants this wall so badly, is he talking about a literal slab of brick like the Great Wall of China? Or is he talking about heightened reinforcement in areas of vulnerability? Find the common rhetoric with the folks on the other side. We all agree that there are issues there that need to be addressed. But just to talk in a two-dimensional fashion about a brick structure, no. I mean, your folks that supported you and elected you, they want you to fulfill a campaign promise. Well, let's find how we fix immigration problems in this country along that border and work together to accomplish it. He's guilty of two-dimensional thinking here on this. It's got to be a brick wall. Well, not necessarily, Mr. President. Maybe there's ways that we can do this where we can give you what you want and what we all need, which is to strengthen our security and do it the right way and not in an inhumane fashion where children are dying.
Yeah, but you kind of, if that were the case, then 6-7 months ago, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi wouldn't have given the president $20 billion for the wall in exchange for DACA. Let's go to the DACA thing. I mean, your thoughts on that whole situation. President Obama said it was unconstitutional, but he made it happen anyway. I wish we could all be like that. As an attorney, as someone who has more background than all of us, your thoughts on DACA?
Well, sure. This is another thing. Where Pelosi, this is one of these. DACA is another issue where as they're starting to sit down now at the beginning of the year, this is something that they both need to talk about. Do we scrap it? Do we continue with it? Do we amend it? It's one variable in an equation, Kevin, that needs to be vetted by all sides. In its current form, or what the Democrats are asking for, I'm not necessarily sure is tenable. So it's got too many tentacles to try to tackle, each one. I would say put everything on the table in the next couple of weeks here, moving forward, if that's possible, and see what happens.
Well, we'll see how that plays out. But I still go back to, and how we used to say it in the old days, your president, President Obama, constitutional attorney, a law professor, he acknowledged it's unconstitutional, but he made it up as he went, or did he?
Well, here's the thing. The Supreme Court has changed. If, in fact, it is unconstitutional, I suspect that this is a Supreme Court with the right case and the right set of facts, and that's what I'm sure folks are waiting for. We're going to get that through the federal court system relatively quickly, and we'll find out soon enough what this court thinks. I would think this court would strike it down.
Yeah, but, realistically, Jim, and we talk about this on KIDO Talk Radio, your people always stick together. We're still hurting about David Souter and Roberts flip-flopping, and who knows about Kavanaugh. But, your folks, they always stick together. We might get the great switcheroo, as happens so often in wrestling and other areas. We think we're, the great swerve, as they call it.
Oh, just when you think he's on the good side, he pulls out an NWO shirt. One
right.
of those.
Exactly.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, anything's possible. I just think this court's a little bit more conservative leaning, but I've been surprised before when Roberts came down on that decision. I never thought that was going to happen either. You can be surprised, but all indicators to me are the right set of facts. In this court, I'm very concerned. I don't necessarily agree that it's completely unconstitutional. this is the type of court I think is, and this is the administration that's looking for the right case to run up the chain to this group of individuals.
Hopefully that will happen, but the political fallout would be what?
Oh, what would have to happen immediately would be some legislation. In both sides. I don't want to say pandemonium, but you're going to have some serious chaos. And it could have unintended consequences, economic consequences, public safety consequences. If this thing starts to move through the courts and it looks like inevitably something is going to happen that's going to strike it and create uncertainty, both sides, I say it, hopefully, but I'm not really optimistic, I guess, is we're going to have to find some way to close the loopholes, fix the constitutional issues and or concerns, and have a good, solid piece of legislation. You would like to think that perhaps they could do that now before we even get into the courts. I just don't think that's going to happen. Oftentimes, what do we see? Whether it's an act of violence or an attack or some other type of cataclysmic issue, the barn doors get closed after the horses, are already gone. We may not see any type of real constructive constitutional legislation until it gets struck. And by then, who knows, Kevin? Who knows? But no, the short answer to your question, I would think unintended consequences are economy and public safety if it were to be struck.
You think we're that dependent on folks that have been here that aren't Americans through no fault of their own?
No, I think what happens is you're talking about, families, you're talking about protests, you're talking about jobs, you're talking about consequences that are going to have a really negative ripple effect. This country right now is wound so tight on this issue and so many other issues that it would lead to protests, it would lead to walkouts, it will public safety. That's why I say public safety and economy. There are going to be ripple effects if people think in a binary fashion and just say the whole thing has to go. And how long has this been going on? You can't just rip this out. You're taking a significant chunk of families, of business. Where do you stop? I'm trying to gloss over at 40,000 feet, but no, unintended consequences of an action like that could lead to very drastic consequences. And we haven't seen this type of tension since the late 60s. Before that, maybe the Civil War, quite frankly. The Constitution right now is being stretched, and in a broad stroke like that the pen of a Supreme Court justice could start to tear some fabric that can't be mended.
Well, now you know how my people feel. We're always on the losing end.
I hear you. Well, not necessarily, but...
All right, more coming up with our great friend Jim Byrne joining us, Kevin Miller in the morning. KIDO Talk Radio. Remember, we've always got the great blogs, great information at KIDOTalkRadio.com. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. And I hope you're having a blessed day. Kevin Miller with you, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Jim Byrne joining us east of the Great River, a Democrat, and very proud to be a Democrat. Jim, I have to ask you, what type of Democratic Party do you have? I know the Jim Byrne Democrat. I know the Sherrod Brown Democrat. I know the Bernie Democrat. I don't know do you embrace socialism? Are you down with that?
Well, it depends on, how you want to define that. I mean, there's people out there, throwing up pictures of these candidates marching with Lenin and Stalin, and that really hasn't worked. If you define this movement in our party, this DSA movement, as a movement that is looking to establish a strong middle class, a good, real minimum wage that you can earn a living and raise your family, if you're having health care that you can afford, if you can afford your college, things that Franklin Delano Roosevelt campaigned on and rebuilt this country on, then yeah, what's wrong with that? Our Democratic Party out here went so far, and I don't hesitate to criticize it. That's what, they label me a maverick out here, and I don't mind that. I wear it with honor. They got so far down the road to chase all these issues, and I don't mind that. They're going to champion every single cause. But when the people in your party that your leadership are looking for to address issues that I just addressed, I need to put food on my table. I need to, afford to go to the hospital if I have to. Like, I got to get my kids through school. I'm making choices now whether to put my my ailing parent in a nursing home or send my daughter to college. And your party's chasing some other issue over here somewhere that isn't going to answer that question, and your opponents are addressing those issues. We'll take care of the middle class. We'll take care of health care. We'll take care of college. We're going to, bring coal back in Western Pennsylvania, things Trump was saying, and your party isn't addressing that. You've got a problem. Folks in the DSA are addressing the fundamental tenets that built the Democratic Party under FDR, pulled us out of a depression, and prepared us for the Nazis. And we won that war because he built the infrastructure ahead of time.
Now, wait a minute,
So
Jim.
they're campaigning on that, and they're winning.
You're saying that Cortez and others that are all about socialism that we were taught during the Cold War is evil. It's a good thing. It goes back to good old FDR.
No. I'm talking about democratic socialism. I'm talking about the tenets of what built our party back in 1930, 31, and 32 after the Depression, which was expanding middle class, which was affordable health care, which was affordable education, which is creating opportunities for jobs. Basic, fundamental, no-nonsense, roll up your sleeves and have an opportunity to build a life type of conversations. I'm not talking about, somebody sitting down at your door every day or, taking away your individual liberties. No. That's where it's being twisted. And the candidates out here in Western Pennsylvania that have run on the, as Democratic Socialists have talked about those fundamental building blocks of what started our party, getting back to basic binary issues that are common sense. And they've been winning. I'm sure you remember the Costas from Allegheny County. And for your listeners, the Costa family is 3 generations of politicians on the Democratic side out here. One of those families, it's a local political dynasty. 2 of them, state representatives, entrenched. They work hard for their districts. They were facing opposition from 2 younger candidates in their late 20s who were running on the Democratic Socialist platform, speaking about those fundamental issues. And both of the challengers easily defeated 2 entrenched incumbents on that message. Yeah, and we're not just seeing that indigenous to Allegheny, as you mentioned. We're seeing it across the country. People just want to get back to a basic, non-complicated formula of having a decent job, a decent health care plan, an opportunity to raise their kids and put food on the table.
Right. But the problem is they can't afford it. They can't afford these government programs. I mean, you're an honest guy. Let's take a look at our debt and deficit. If you all want socialism for everyone, comrade, all of a sudden, where are we going to pay for it? How are we going to pay for it?
Well, that's where the rubber meets the road. Obviously, they are going to have to be able to show how within our means, without raising taxes and taking your paycheck, that they're going to be able to make this work. And I think we all agree that there are ways. You go into, I've talked about this out here on conservative radio. It's not about looking for new revenue streams. It's about retooling the current revenue streams. Instead of dumping money into some nonsense patronage pork program for some fat cat over here, you pull that money and you put it over there. You've just got to take the time to do the intricate work of item by item in that budget. You make a little cut here, you eliminate this over there, and you move it to where it's needed. It's not about raising taxes. It's about common sense approach to the revenue streams that are already coming in. That's the conversation I'm hearing.
It all sounds so wonderful. Our great friend Jim Byrne joining us. Yes.
And it will be.
Well, I don't know about that. I don't think Pelosi's down with, Madam Speaker's down with, the radicals and such.
Well, she calls them radicals. Look, they came in. They came in without the establishment. Speaker Pelosi is holding on to her gavel because A, there were no other candidates, and B, based on the climate in Washington, you need a seasoned veteran and warrior right now to go toe to toe. So that's why she's holding on, and she agreed to being, to a finite amount of time. The party is changing. I'm not saying that it's running crazy left. In some areas it is, but most areas out here where I am in Western PA, no. A lot of pragmatists out here. They just want to see things getting done.
Right. And
but they're tired of the same faces not getting it done,
What?
Yeah,
but, Jim, most of those folks were elected that they would not elect Pelosi as the Speaker of the House. It's a giant bait and switch.
Well, there's some risk there. I mean, they campaigned on, we're going to make a change. Okay. Now, what's the alternative? Who else stepped up to throw their hat in? Nobody. They'll have to answer their constituents for that. But look, at the end of the day, if she was the necessary evil that the party needed to push the entire team down the field and represent the people that elected them, then we'll see if people are forgiving when they come up again in 18 months for election.
Well, we shall see. It might be the return of the Mac, if you will, the return of the Republicans. We've kind of veered off course, gone very left here on KIDO Talk Radio, the Kevin Miller Show. Jim Byrne joining us here. Before we get any further, obviously our thoughts and prayers going with the people of your city in Pittsburgh. It's been a few months since the shooting at the synagogue. Can you tell us how the city is recovering?
The city has always shown remarkable strength, like our nation whenever there's a crisis. The outpouring of humanity, Kevin, and compassion from around the world, it just reinforces the good in all of our souls. The memorials, the services, the outreach has been great. It's a strong town. You've lived here. You've seen the fabric. There's a strong sense of community here. There always has been. A friend did an article in a local paper a few years ago about, hey, where does that sense of community come from in Western Pennsylvania, and why is it so strong here? And he had a pretty good theory. It was, back in the days of settlers, once you got over the Appalachian Mountains and settled in here at the Three Rivers for the winter, the cavalry wasn't coming over that hill once winter set in. You had to depend on each other, and it didn't matter what your ethnicity was, what your religion was. It was about survival. And I think our ancestors here, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, and others, they ingrained that, generation to generation. So you have that strength here to begin with. So many professional athletes that have played in our sports teams over the last 50 years from all over the country and world, they've chose to raise their families here because of that. So you have that pre-existing going into this horrific incident. That coupled with the goodwill of humanity has helped us to heal quicker. But there are still memorials and tributes, and they will continue indefinitely. There's a lot of love and positive energy to the families, and you start to appreciate in a crisis, how important interaction is with each other, and these things that we fight about politically, or fighting with your neighbor, or not speaking to someone over a slight or a misspoken word. Those things all melt away. And why? And folks out here are saying to themselves, why does it take a crisis or a tragedy like this for us to remember what's most important? And that's looking for the good in people and helping each other. And we have that here, and we're hoping that it carries over on a much higher level as we move forward.
More coming up with Jim Byrne next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Kevin Miller with you. Glad you're with us this morning. Our old friend Jim Byrne joining us from east of the Great River. So let's talk a little bit about the president. A couple weeks ago, Mitt Romney's mad at him. And I'm thinking, wow, Mitt Romney, could he really run for president on the Republican platform? And I mean, you've dealt with the establishment Republicans. Could you see that? And maybe Trump, like Kevin Miller, he always needs an enemy. So what do you think?
I don't know that Mitt Romney's going to change any narrative. I don't think, I think as we saw back when, not that far back there when that happened, Mr. Trump pushed right back, and his folks, appropriately, for their president's interests, established Mitt as, this is an establishment guy who wasn't able to win the presidency. He speaks for the establishment of our party, which hasn't done anything good for any of us. So it doesn't persuade Mr. Trump's base. The people that listen to Mitt Romney are the people that went for Donald Trump in the first place. Is he going to be like a voice like John McCain when he gets there? Maybe. Is he going to rally people? I don't know that he necessarily changes the narrative. He's not the first Republican senator or Republican national office holder to push back against things that some in the party, the GOP, don't like about Mr. Trump. It won't drastically change the narrative. His niece, is the chair of the Republican National Committee, I believe, and I haven't seen her swayed by her Uncle Mitt's statements. I see her still pretty much aligned with the president. So it wasn't as much a splash or anything. It was more like a pebble in a pond. It's not going to create many waves.
I don't know about that. I mean, I'm sure the establishment, they're not happy with President Trump and what he's done. He's not really been a friend to them.
Well, Kevin, what has the establishment done about Mr. Trump in the 2 years since he's been in office?
They haven't done enough.
They haven't stopped him. They haven't reined him in. Every so often, someone will say, "Well, I don't agree necessarily with what he said," but when he calls someone a name, when he demeans somebody, when he makes a statement, there's been no leadership in the GOP to rebuke him, to push back on him when he behaves in an inappropriate fashion. They've pretty much just surrendered the entire party to him, and it's cost them in the midterms, and it's probably going to cost them more until somebody reins him in, or if something else happens with these investigations.
More coming up next. Traffic and weather together. Let's get you to work safely and on time. KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Dave. Thank you, Larry. Appreciate it. Kevin Miller with Jim Byrne here. So we were talking about the presidential race. You might have like 50 people running for office. Heck, you might be running for office. What do you make of that?
Well, I haven't. I might form an exploratory committee. I haven't. Not likely. But we'll see. We've had Elizabeth Warren with the exploratory committee. You'll probably see Beto O'Rourke. Hillary's ruminating. What will happen for us to get it back, and I mean get the party back to where it's moving in a functional direction again. It's not there yet. Getting back to the platform and having a real conversation about this. It's probably going to be somebody coming out of nowhere. President Obama, nobody gave him a chance. He was way back in the polls, and all of a sudden the momentum started. It's going to be something like that. I bet you, Kevin, when we're talking about this, if we're both in a position where we're going to be able to have a conversation like this in 20 or like maybe even a year from now, there's probably going to be somebody coming from 3 quarters out on the outside lane, and all of a sudden they're going to come up around the side. Probably somebody we don't even know yet. There's probably a name that hasn't even been in the conversation yet. It'll start little campaign here or there, little decent showing in Iowa, little showing up in New Hampshire. Next thing you know, there's a message that's resonating, and next thing you know, they're accepting the nomination, which I actually think our party needs desperately. We need a fresh new face and to pull us away from the same old folks we've been seeing for the last 10 to 20 years.
I don't know about that. Your fresh new face the last time, if the rules hadn't been fixed against him, is Bernie.
Well, he was the fresh new, in a manner of speaking, he was. And I was with the state party up until September of 15, but close enough to it to watch that abomination of how he was treated and how they put their thumbs on the scale. And I'm so glad that got exposed, because it kicked some of the people out that created this disenfranchisement with the party organization. It still needs a lot of repairs, but yes, had that not have happened, he may have been our nominee, and he may even be our president right now. A lot of folks have not forgotten that. He may be the fresh new face coming again, and I still think he would qualify and fit that definition. Then he could be vetted on a variety of issues as to why he would be the most qualified. We have Elizabeth Warren now. You may see Joe Biden. You may see Beto O'Rourke. I'm still looking for that name out of nowhere that nobody's talked about yet, to see who that might be, what their message might be, if they can put that Obama-type infrastructure around them and see where that takes all of us.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that really worked well for the Republicans. I mean, you had, debate night, and then who was on the first debate, who was on the second debate. Maybe that helped the president win, because he just, was the reluctant Republican. He'd been more identified with the Democrat, ran as a Reform Party guy back in the day. So yeah. You take a look at the Democrats, and I mean, it's like a lot of, it's like going to the Golden Corral. You've got your West Coast Democrats, you've got your East Coast, you've got, Beto, is that it? Beto O'Rourke
out of Texas. Yes.
My man Rahm Emanuel called him a loser.
That might help Beto. So, you judge. Sometimes you got to judge your. Look, if an establishment guy like Rahm, which he is, he's an establishment guy. If he starts calling somebody like that names, that's going to point the rest of the party in Beto's direction. That Beto should count that as a blessing, quite frankly. So we'll see. I mean, but you just mentioned the whole path that Trump took. I mean, he was up on that stage, and nobody thought it was even serious. Some of those early polls, he came up high, like, oh, that's going to fade, that's going to fade, that's going to fade. It never did. It was like, oh, he'll be out of this soon enough. Oh, look at him now. It was, I'm not part of this. I'm coming in, not because I have to, because I want to hang out with these guys, because I want to come in and shake things up. I want to shake things up is a good message. I just don't like this messenger specifically. I like the message. I just don't care for this messenger.
I'm with you, but I'm still. I don't know if more is really better. Very different from the last time when you had, was it the former governor of Maryland, Hillary Clinton, and Bernie Sanders, the avowed socialist. So, I mean, you've got Cory Booker, you've got Kamala Harris, you've got Beto, you've got. I'm trying to think of who else could jump in. Bernie, Hillary, the Castro, former mayor of San Antonio.
Right.
I'm just getting confused trying to come up with a roster.
As were we with your slate of like 25 or 30 of them. I remember that first day up on that stage. We're going to go through that, and they'll start to drop relatively quickly. All the names you mentioned, I think, would all do a fine job. However, I'm still waiting to see a new face to come in with some, to shake things up a little bit. But we'll see. We'll see. I don't mind the big, healthy, crowded primary. Let's have at it. Let's bring everything out onto the table. Let's vet it. Let's have our democratic festivus and air the grievances and get behind one solid candidate. We got one shot at this. We better not screw it up.
Well, one can only hope. Jim Byrne, we always appreciate you. And next time you need to drive that 6 hours, so let me know. I'll meet you. We'll meet halfway.
I look forward to it. It's always great to talk with you. I miss you out here, buddy. It was always good to agree to disagree with you. But I wish you and your listeners a safe and prosperous New Year and many blessings, and I hope to be with you again very soon.
Jim, thank you. Have a great day.
You too.